Uh, as far as my greatest accomplishment, oh man, oh, like the hardest thing I've ever done, we got to go to the tower. Here we go. So I'm gonna share the hardest thing that I've ever done in the game, and of course I've had to do it solo because again there's a bunch of jumping puzzles, and I didn't want to drag in a team and bring them down by waiting for me a whole bunch. So I did this. I did this solo. I don't know whose guide I watched. I don't know if it was esoteric. Uh, I don't know. I watched somebody's guide, and I just took a Friday night, and just said, you know what, I'm gonna put a few hours aside and figure out how to do this because I wanted the puppy. I wanted a cyber puppy. And so that's where it was, in some type of ridiculous exotic mission. And yeah, so I jumped in there for that. I jumped in there for that. And then in terms of like just a general sense overall, this is my item manager, which I absolutely love, and I don't know how people manage their gear without it. But this is everything that I've got in here. And of course, I've tried to narrow all this stuff down based on, what the god rules are. And again, I go to higher tier players or hardcore players to figure out what are the god roles. Sometimes it's a set, you know, um, combination of perks, and then sometimes you have wiggle room depending on what you want to use. So again, I just base it off of, I take in that information and then I say, okay, what's my play style? What do I want to lean into when I'm playing? And yeah, so this stuff is just warlock stuff. But yeah, I don't know how people manage, like, even when they improve the vault space, like in terms of like the menu system, it's still not better to me than this. So yeah, this is where I'm at. My hunter and my titan they're not in a good place right now. A lot of the campaigns, the story mission campaigns, hunter and titan, they have not finished those. I don't even think I finished renegades with them. So I'm basically a warlock only, uh and probably been that way for months now. But that's where I'm at. So that's my confession. That's what I want to say. I still enjoy Destiny sometimes. Um, I finally got a hang of the Lawless Frontier, so I've played that, just over and again. The Portal. Do I love the Portal? Absolutely not. Um, The Renegades expansion was fine. I ended up. How far did I get with this? Yes. So the last thing I'll touch on is from the Renegades expansion, which Star Wars is one of my favorite, you know, film sagas. So did I want them to bring it into Destiny? No, but it just seemed like they were running out of ideas or options to try to pull in, pull players back into the game. It was fine. Um, so I went Totality Division and got that to rank 5. Then I moved to Tharsis Reformation, got them to rank 5. Then I reluctantly went to the Pikers and I got them to rank 5. Then I went to Spider. Where is Spider? There we go. And I bought all of his, the options that they give you, that he has for the renegade abilities. I bought all of those. So I just did everything that I could do. Solo, of course, you run into Lawless Frontier with a team, but my main goal was to improve on my own as much as I could. So then when I run Lawless Frontier or something like that with a team, I'm not like, people aren't waiting on me or something like that. And so on my channel, I think one of the recent posts I had was when my teammates died, and I had to hold off all the enemies until the exfil or the ship came, and then I was able to jump out. So that was one of my one of those moments where it's like, oh, I'm getting better at the game. So I think with Marathon, it's just like you need that onboarding to where players can start at the bottom and then work their way up. Now, if someone wants to call that casual, it's fine. But for me, it's like Destiny really gave me a chance to grow as a player, to the point where now it's like, I went into this season thinking, oh, I want to get, the title. I have a few titles, over the years, but not a lot. And I felt like this season was a good opportunity for me to get a title. And I think I got stuck on the Praxic Blade. Yeah. I got stuck on Fire and Ice. I ran it up. Obviously, I ran it. But then when you run it the second time, there's a 30-minute timer that you have to complete the mission before the timer runs out, which is crazy. So that's where I got kicked out. I got kicked out, and I'm like, darn it, I need to finish Fire and Ice on Legendary, beat the timer so that I can finish this one. So then I can finish this one, and then the other, like the tapes, and then the collecting the ghosts. I can look for a guide online and figure out where those are. But that's only going to get me to 20. I need 22 triumphs completed to get this title. And I played this a few times, and I just can't solo it. So and this Fire and Ice is one of those things where the jumping puzzle is like on steroids, to where it takes me time to get through it, and you don't have time to get through it because you're on a timer. So I think the best thing I can do is just again watch the hardcore players because I've seen people like post videos of them soloing, this really difficult content. So it's just trying to get their pacing down. Okay, how fast do I need to get from point A to point B to C to D, etc., so that I can get through this. So what's going to end up happening is the same thing that happened with I think it was Barrow. Is that when I was going to get this weapon, I was on a team a couple of times and I just couldn't keep up and didn't know where I was going and it was a mess. So then I decided, okay, I'm going to master this solo, right? The mission. So I ran the mission, um, using a guide on YouTube until I could figure out where I was going, where I was supposed to jump. I didn't fall as much as I was falling before, that sort of thing. But then I got to the boss at the end and couldn't. I'm not good enough to solo the boss at the end. So then I was like, okay, I just wasted over an hour um, getting to this boss and I kept dying, right? So then I was like, okay, I know how to get to the boss, even though it's just this long process, right? So then I quit, found a team, and these dudes were like hardcore players. They were just going through the enemies like crazy. So obviously it didn't take me that long to get to the boss. The only thing I had to focus on doing was make sure I get through the jumping puzzles and I knew like which way I was supposed to go, that sort of thing. So then on that first run, got to the boss. We defeated the boss. They were like their gear, their setups, and everything was more stacked out than mine. Um, and then I got the weapon that way. So I started approaching the harder content that way. It's just practicing as much as I could on my own, figure out where I'm supposed to go. Because a lot of times you'll jump in with hardcore players, and if you don't already know what you're doing, you forget it, right? Just forget it. So just making sure that I didn't have to be carried, you know, through the process. Now, was I as good as those players? No, but manageable, getting through everything, clearing ads if nothing else, right? So that's the biggest thing. Um, and then I went to go get the catalyst. Was it the catalyst for this or was it something else? But I ran it um, because I was trying to get back to rank number 9 for the Master Conquest. But this time, I went in there with a team. There are revives, and we just kept running out of revives. So then I got frustrated and I quit. But I was hoping to get back to 9. So that was my other challenge to myself too. Was last season was the first time I got to Vanquisher. Um, and it was just really a good moment for me in terms of me getting better or challenging myself to get better as a player. So I mean, I guess I say all that to say that there's room for players to grow. And I think that top tier players have to give other players that room to grow. But if you're just running around like calling people filthy casuals or demeaning them, it's like who's going to want to support the game you're playing? You know. So for me, again, I go in, I played the game, I played the game for long enough that I just got bored on the bottom tier activities, and I wanted to do something else, and then I wanted to do something else, and then I wanted to try something else. And that just happened organically on its own as you play the game. But if you're Bungie and you're making a game saying, "Oh, we don't want to be, a casual extraction shooter like our graders. We want something for hardcore players without having a good onboarding for more of the player population." It's I don't think long term it's gonna work. I just don't think it's going to work because there is no room for growth. Like everybody's not gonna start their marathon journey at the top, in terms of how well they can play the game. A Destiny player that's a top tier can just jump into marathon and be a top tier player because they're used to being in that space, right? But if you have players like me, we need a lower space in the game to start. And then organically over time, when we start looking at streamers and saying, "Oh, I want this weapon, or I want this gear, or I want this shield," then it'll grow on its own. But if you try to force it down people's throats and think that the game is going to be successful and you're losing your loot at the same time every time you fail, I mean, I don't think that's going to be successful.